Hey, this is Les Thatcher. Give me back my pro wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
For those who don't know, now you know, baby. This is Hot Rod Biggs, Jared, Jimmy Street. We're going to take them to the limit one more time, baby, right here on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast, and it is me, your host, Jimmy Street, here as always, and hope you all are having an awesome day. Thank you all so much for dropping by and checking out the show today, and who we have today is the one and only Les Thatcher. Yeah, that's right, man. That's a legend, right? I mean, Les is cool. It did take us a while to get this interview lined up, but as they say, good things come to those who wait. We finally got it lined up, so can't wait to check it out. Of course, Les and his legendary career. So there's so much to talk about, but before we get to the main portion of the show today, we got a few things to cover. Of course, last episode was This Month in Wrestling History with Quinton Quarisma, episode 13, and he was covering July again. Yeah, that's right. So this was the 13th episode, so it's the first year anniversary of This Month in Wrestling History with Quinton Quarisma. Couldn't be happier. Show's going great. Thank you all for checking it out. But he has made one trip around the sun, and now he's back. So, you know, Q's digging deep. Hope y'all are digging it. Really enjoy it. Great show last week. Continuing on, guys, I'd love for you to go to PahiUSA.com. Our buddy Dale Torborg, the Demon, this is his shoe company, Pahi, and it's for those of you that may have balance issues. I know some of our listeners may be older. If you guys have some balance issues like myself, like my mom, get these shoes. Use code BBB10 at PahiUSA.com. They've got some great styles, slides, sneakers, kind of more casual shoes. Y'all check them out, especially if you or your parent or a loved one has balance issues. BBB10 at Pahi USA. Get you 10% off. That's Dale's code. And definitely go check those out. We love Pahi. Speaking of Dale, I actually just got to see him at the Gathering 2026. And let me tell y'all something. That was a blast. T-Mart puts on a great convention, and honestly, this was the second time I've been. The first time I went, I only went for one day. This time I went for every day. It was incredible. Guys, if you're in the area or if you're not, I highly recommend this. They put on a great event. Like I said, I got to see Dale. Some of the people I got to see, and I'm not going to list everybody, but our buddy Rusty Riddle was just on the show. Had to see him. Of course, Mr. Number One, George South, Nikita, Magnum, David Isley got to get his Wonderama card signed. I was very happy about that. The Demon, of course, like I said, we got to talk to Tommy Rich, get a picture with him. That was cool. Got to see the Mulkeys, man. They're doing good. Randy's doing okay. He's fighting the good fight. Y'all keep Randy and Bill in your prayers. Those Mulkeys are treasures for wrestling. Also got to officially meet Roy Lucier and our buddy Gene Jackson. Yeah, I got to hang out with Gene. The Friday, we really got a lot of time together. We booked the territory. It was a lot of fun. Good to see you as always, Gene. Got to meet the Grapplers and the Dirty White Boys. If you know, you know. Well, I would hope everybody that's listening knows. But anyway, got to see those guys. Tony and Lynn are class acts as always. Got to meet the one and only Austin Idol Power Hour. Kind of had met him before, but anyway, good to see Austin. Kid Cash as well. Kid Cash was sitting right beside him. Got to take a picture with Kid Cash, Firebreaker Chip, John Schuyler, and the main man himself, Pat Tanaka. Overall, Jamie Combs, former guest of the show, former guest co-host of the show, Jamie Combs and his wife, Beth, had a great time seeing everyone. Got to meet a lot of new people, meet some listeners. Wes Moore, it was great to meet you. all these people. So I highly recommend next year hit up Gathering 2027. You'll have a blast, I promise. All right, y'all. That's all I got for the open today. Quinton's joining me on the other side. Welcome to episode 132 with Les Thatcher. All right, we are back with a very special guest. And guys, if you knew behind the scenes what we've done to get this gentleman on, we felt like we've been fighting against predicaments and circumstances and things like that where we didn't know if this was going to happen. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome the one and only legendary Les Thatcher to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. Sir, it's great to have you.
And we finally did make it, didn't we, Jimmy?
Yes, we did, sir. Persistence. I'm sure you,
brother.
Yeah. I'm sure you've trained a few guys and told them that word, right?
I think I have, probably once or twice. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. It is an honor. Take it away, Q.
All right, Mr. Thatcher. So we're going to go basically right to the beginning. Who trained you? What year and where was it at?
Abraham Lincoln, Clinton. No, not really. No, that's not true. Anyway, no, I was trained by Tony Santos, which was actually the first ever pro wrestling school open to the general public.
Was that in Boston?
Boston, 1960. Yes, actually, I first fell in love with the business at age 9, and in my later teens, I kept trying to find a way to get in. And of course, back then it was a closed shop. This was the late 50s. And so finally I picked up a Wrestling Review magazine one time. And here's a story on Tony Santos' gym in Boston, who's training young aspiring athletes for a career in pro wrestling. So I sent him a letter, and I got a trifold back, which I still have today, by the way. But anyway, showing some pictures and this and that, and be a star and travel the world and all that nonsense. But anyway, long story short, I saved up. I got on a bus in February of 1960 in Cincinnati, my hometown, and went to Boston. And the rest, I guess you would say, is history. But that's how.
How old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
Yeah. Very cool.
So was there anybody else that became famous when trained with you up there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Actually, when I was getting ready to leave up there in 91, Luke Graham broke in there.
Really?
So, yeah. Dusty Rhodes broke in about 8 years after me.
Wow.
Bob Harmon, the original Beautiful Bobby, broke in there a few years after me as well. Trying to think who else. Wow. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, quite a few guys broke in there.
Wow.
But that's how it all started, 1960. So
Dang.
and my first match was July the 4th, 1960. So this past July the 4th was my 66th anniversary of my first match.
Wow. That's awesome.
And you guys probably aren't 66 if I combine both your ages together, right?
You might be surprised. We're closer than you think.
So on that first match, who did you work and what name did you use?
Les Thatcher. That was
okay.
That's not my real name. I started to say we're not on video. A poster up behind me of a guy named Les Malady, Malady, against a guy named Pat Patterson in Holyoke, Massachusetts in 1961. That would have been me and the real Pat Patterson.
Oh.
Malady comes from Ireland. And of course, when I broke in Boston, which is a huge Irish population, nobody said anything about changing it. Although it's the way it's spelled, it gets mispronounced all the time. Malady, all sorts of things. And of course, those of us who carry the name are used to that. So anyway, when I left the Boston area and got started in the Indianapolis territory for Jim Barnett in 1962, I was using my real name. And then about 6 weeks in, Les Ruffin, who was one of the bookers, came to me and said, Mr. Barnett, is tired of hearing the ring announcers and the commentators mispronounce your name. We want to change it to Les Thatcher. Do you care? And at that point, I just wanted to wrestle. I didn't care what you called me. And so I said, sure. So it's been Les Thatcher ever since.
Okay. Well, tell us about working the Calgary territory early in your career.
Well, that was like going to school. Territories meant so much to the business. It's really a shame that the way things have modernized and changed, because the territories. Well, I started in Boston. I excuse me. Started there in July 4th, 1960 at Blue Hills, Maine. Wrestled up till just before Christmas, went home for Christmas, came back to Boston in early 61 and stayed there until November, came home and made my first territory connection with Barnett Doyle in Indianapolis in 62. But the point is, you change territories. It didn't necessarily change the style so much as the way that style was used. So every territory for a new talent was like going to a new school. You're working with fresh guys. And back then, there was no independence. So when I stepped in the ring, chances are it was going to be a veteran, 9 times out of 10. Well, like when I broke in, there was one other young guy out of the school besides myself that was out on, was working the territory up in New England. But anyway, so that's the deal. You could learn so much from those guys, right? Plus, it was a different style. Everything was called in the ring. So you had to learn to be also creative and creative on the fly, which today, I don't even want to get into. Let's talk 45 minutes in the dressing room about our 6-minute match and lay out every step. I don't even want to hear it. So,
Amen.
Well, if you held a gun to my head and said, Les, we're going to lay out this 10-minute match step by step, I'd say, just shoot me. Forget it. Well, first of all, I don't think I could do that. And most of the time, to be quite honest, if you work in this business at that level, I bet you're not doing it either. You can talk about all you want in the back, but once you get out there, you got to memorize that while you're doing it. And you can't stop and think about it for a while. I don't know. In its own way, that's maybe a little harder than being creative on the fly. But not being creative on the fly, I think, has changed the business to quite a certain degree. That it's not necessarily the same business that I worked in.
Yeah, I learned that you can go back there and talk about everything, but you go out there, if the crowd ain't buying it, you gotta change stuff. And if you laid out your whole match, it's not gonna work. You gotta know what that crowd wants.
No, that's right. Well, it's like with us, we were working 5 nights a week when I first started it. And hell, once the blue laws were gone, we were working 6, sometimes 7. And sometimes twice on Sundays. But anyway, sure. I mean, like you and I could have this hot match in Knoxville, where I live now, Knoxville, Tennessee, tonight and blow the roof off the place. We can take that same match west of here, about 175 miles to Nashville, do the same match tomorrow night and get no reaction whatsoever. So we better be able to change what we're doing on the fly. And that's the biggest problem I see with the let's lay it all out in the back. And besides that, opportunities pop up in a match that you can't foresee, to get something in that works. It's like you're writing if you're a writer, script writer, let's say for a TV show, it's almost like you're writing the whole show as you go, and you might make a mistake here or there, but you can't stop. Does that make sense? I don't know if it does or not.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. So to continue on with you, Les, in 63, you worked a guy we love to hear stories about, Sputnik Monroe. What do you remember about Sputnik?
Buddy. Oh, I love Spuddy. What a character. You know what? He kept dressing rooms laughing and fun to be in. And you know what? In corporate wrestling America today, he probably get fired for being honest. No, seriously. But what a hell of a performer. Yes. Well, the first time I saw him was in 1963 in the Kansas City territory. And it was in Wichita. But I think he was just working. He wasn't working the territory, just coming through or stopping there. and took a booking. But I do remember, again, this is like I'm 2.5, 3 years into my career, so I'm still learning. And so anyway, we do have a chance to talk in the back, which back then that wasn't often an option where you could talk to your opponent until you got in the ring. But anyway, he said, now when you make that comeback, come with fire and light me up. And he said, now I'm going to call for a backdrop. Help me get up in the air. And I, yes, sir. So anyway, we get out there and he said, here, you know, he calls for my comeback and here we go. I set up for the backdrop and I launch him as best I can. I like take one step forward to catch my balance and look back and he's still in the damn air. I thought, oh, God, I've killed him, right? I'd never seen anybody that high on a backdrop before. That was my introduction to Spuddy. But we hit it off and worked with him in other territories. Roger Kirby and I worked with him and Crockett in the Tampa territory. I'm trying to think where else I might have worked with him. Louisiana. Well, he promoted in Monroe, Louisiana. And anyway, yeah, Spuddy was a great guy. Hell of a performer. And Christ, you couldn't have the history of Memphis wrestling without having Sputnik Monroe and Billy Wicks involved. Not me.
Amen.
Oh, yeah. All right. So in 1964, I see where you worked the Sheik. Back in 64, was he doing that wild, crazy style?
Of course he was. That's Sheik's never been anybody different, my friend. Yeah. What a talented guy. Well, now you talk about kayfabe and living kayfabe. At that time, his wife, Joyce, was the slave girl.
Yep.
And when they stopped on the road to get gas, Joyce said, fill it up, not Eddie. They went to a restaurant. She ordered for him, not he didn't order for himself.
Wow.
Yeah. To keep the gimmick, right? But if you saw this guy live that gimmick and come out of that ring doing that, what they call the camel walk or whatever the hell, and watch the crowds open up. I mean, people, thought he was a lunatic. He was a businessman, to be quite frank. I don't know how many times I worked with him. I loved working with him. He learned a lot. Well, him and the Bruiser both, when I worked when I was in and out of Cincinnati and drag racing still at the time. So I'd wrestle for him and Dick, even when they were running separate territories. And so I got to work with both those guys, God knows how many times. But he was a talented guy. The only thing wrong is when Detroit territory was red hot and they killed it with just him driving himself too hard on top. He wore himself out. So,
all right. So we'll go up to 1967. You go down to the Gulf Coast and you started working with Roger Kirby. Tell us about Roger Kirby.
What do you want to hear about Roger? No, Roger was, we were doing a thing called the Wrestling Cousins, and Dennis Hall was the third member of that group. We all had actually met. I'm a Cincinnati boy. They were both from Indiana. And Dunkirk and where the hell was Roger from? It doesn't matter. Anyway, and we hung out together there. So we happened, all three of us end up in the Atlanta territory in '66 and came up with this idea of going out and doing a three as the Cousins. And what happened was Kirby and I had gone into Pensacola territory, had asked to use us on a Saturday. And then once we were down there, they liked our work and wanted us to come in. They were going to use us on top over in the Louisiana end. So anyway, long story short, there was Jack Dalton, who's Donnie Fargo, and Frank Dalton. And then there was Johnny Long was Bob Dalton. So the whole idea was for Kirby and I to go in and set up the feud with the Daltons, Frank and Jack. And then after Christmas, Dennis comes in and we work six-mans with the three Daltons against the three Cousins. And it ended up, Bob had to leave the territory. So Bo Ramos filled in for him. But we did big business down there with those guys. But anyway, that's where we came up and started using the Cousins deal.
Okay.
And, and we had a lot of those. Curb and Hall were like family. I mean, I love those guys. We had a great time together. And well, when we went into the Carolinas in '67 and actually pitched the same deal to George Becker, the booker, which would have ended up us doing something similar to what the Freebirds did like 5 or 6 years later. And but anyway, but yeah, I love working with those guys, Curb and Dennis. Missed both of them. Both are gone now. And Roger, of course, you know, it's funny. When he was the NWA junior heavyweight champion, I said, you know, where he got his experience was when he was my tag team partner. But then two of the NWA junior champions were my tag team partners. So I said, hey, I don't get the title, but I train the guys who do. Nelson Royal was the other guy who was also a great ring general. That was part of my career is being blessed with working with some of the most legendary talent in the friggin' world, to be quite honest about it. And that goes not just, in the wrestling ring, but in administration. When I got in that end, in broadcasting, where I worked with what I call the Mount Rushmore of broadcasters. But I've shared a microphone with Soley, Ross, Pottle, and Russell. And to me, that's Mount Rushmore right there.
Amen.
But anyway, when you work around people of that kind of talent, that magnitude of who they are and that kind of talent, it's hard to be stupid, right? I mean, you almost have to be a blithering idiot not to learn something. So I attribute, a lot of what I've gained or my Hall of Fame induction and all that would have never happened without, some of what all these guys brought to the table rubbed off. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of excellent people you worked with, recent guest of the show, Joe Malenko, in '67, you were in Florida. You worked his dad, Boris Malenko. What do you remember about the professor?
Oh, working with Larry, Boris, excuse me. Just great. Yeah, hell of a guy, hell of a talent. And Jody, by the way, is going to be on our podcast this coming Friday.
Yes, we'll put that over real quick.
Oh, he's a character.
Yeah.
And you think Joe is funny, you ought to be around his brother, Dean.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah.
Dean is such a straight-faced comedian. It's amazing. He could do stand-up, I believe. But anyway, Boris, of course, in Tampa, that was when I was the National Wrestling Alliance Rookie of the Year, '67. And that's where they announced it and presented me with the trophy, which I have still today, by the way. And,
wow.
Anyway, Gordon Soley. That's where I first met Gordon, and we didn't get to be great fans necessarily because of wrestling or TV, but because I was in drag racing and he owned the stock car track over in St. Petersburg, so racing car, and he had a '67 Trans Am. Or Firebird, Trans Am. And I loved those. I was a big Pontiac. I raced Pontiacs, GTOs. And anyway, so, I love being in that territory. And wrestling with Boris was educational. Like I said earlier, when you're still learning your craft and realize at this point I had been working about 6 years, so I was just catching on. Actually, well, back then they said it'll take you 5 years to get it, to figure out what we're doing here. And I remember that. And then I think today some of these guys wrestle twice a month and wonder why they're not big stars. But you realize back then that was part of. My dear friend, Dr. Tom Pritchard, lives in the area here, too. We get together for lunch about once a week and sit down here at my place and have conversations we would never have in public because all those old guys, they're bitter or they're this or that. But the truth is, when I mentioned earlier about having to be able to call a match on the fly, to lay it all out, versus lay it all out, all you know is the finish. You have to learn to be creative, whether you are or you're not. But then you work with that kind of people, and it's just amazing what you learn from them, And it's a shame that there's not that level today of learning, But anyway, it was Florida was a great learning experience. made a dear friend for life there, Don Curtis. In fact, he was the first guy I ever wrestled in Florida, in Tampa at the old Armory. Yeah, and I was nervous. If you knew Don Curtis's reputation, you'd have been nervous too. No, no, a hell of a worker, and but he could go. He was a legitimate shooter.
Yeah.
And, yeah. But anyway, that night he came to me in the dressing room, and before we even went to the ring, we'd become fast friends, and were up until the time he passed away. God rest his soul. And his widow and I are still friends today, Dottie. So, yeah. So some of the friendships in this business are lasting. But anyway, yeah, there were so many great guys I worked with. Well, as a junior heavyweight and a contender, Hiro Matsuda, former NWA world title, a world champion, was there at the time. And so I had guys like that to work with. And Eddie, if you can't learn from Eddie Graham, my God, you couldn't learn from anybody.
Yeah, that's what we heard.
A tremendous manipulator, yes. Well, to make a car trip with him and have a conversation, that was the other thing. Spending a lot of time in a car with veterans. What are you going to talk about? Your wife's pregnancy, or what's the sale price at the grocery store? Not going to talk about wrestling. And it was for the young guys, it was a learning. Plus, it could be a bad experience if you'd had a bad match and had to ride with them guys for 200 miles going home. Yeah.
Well, in 68, you're up in the mid-Atlantic area. You're working for Crockett, and you worked the Garvin brothers. Do you have anything about those guys?
Oh, shoot. Well, I'd known Terry since Boston. Terry wrestled for Santos in Boston. I met Terry in 1960. Even before I was smart to the business, I stayed in a rooming house just across the street on Westland Avenue from Santos's gym, which was in a warehouse in the middle of a big parking lot at the corner of Mass Avenue and Westland Avenue. Anyway, so in this rooming house, Ronnie Dupree, Golden Boy Dupree, Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, Don Kindred, who was Black Magic, Johnny Mann, and wrestling, all. I was living in a $12 a week rooming house. And anyway, that's where I met all these guys. What I was going to say is, but until I was smartened up on July the 4th, 1960, these guys kayfabed in front of me, and I never caught on at all.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, wow. We'd have dinner together, a bunch of us, or sit out on the front stoop and talk at night and that sort of thing. Yeah, no. And that's one of the things today, the young guys, when they ask me, when they smarten you up, I said, July the 4th, 1960. What they do in between? I said, kick my ass, but that's how I learned.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what about Rip Hawk and Swede Hansen? You got anything about them?
Oh, I love working with those. That was one of the old expressions in the business. Working with so-and-so is a night off. It was always a night off with Hawk and Hansen. Great guys to learn from. When Flair came in, his rookie at the end of his rookie run in Minneapolis to the Carolinas, they teamed him up with Rip to teach him tag team wrestling. Yeah, at that time, Swede had turned babyface, and so it wasn't like they were breaking the team up or anything. But yeah, Hawk and Hansen, friggin' fantastic. How's that? They drew big money for a lot of years in that territory. They did.
Yep, sure did. All right, so we're gonna go back over. Stick around in 68, Eric. You started working for Gulas-Welch.
Oh, yeah. No, in September of 68, I went to Nashville.
Yeah.
Well, I'd been in the Carolinas for a year and a half, and I'd had a good run. In fact, part of 67 and 68, I was working six-mans with Becker and Weaver, and Becker was the booker, and they were the top babyface tag team. And so I was getting good experience and doing well there, but it was time to move out, to go someplace else. And Dennis Hall and Ken Lucas were in Nashville. Otherwise, I would not have gone there, to be quite honest with you. And so they were doing well. So I went to Nashville. Yeah, that's how I got hooked up here in Knoxville with Kazana for the first time in 1968.
Okay.
So you just mentioned him, Ken Lucas. Tell us about Ken Lucas. That's one of the guys I wish there was more footage out there because they say he was a great babyface.
He was a great wrestler, period. I have worked with him as a partner, as a babyface in tag matches. I have wrestled against him when he was a heel. And if you read one of Flair's books, he'll tell you, that his matches with Kenny Lucas were some of the best he ever had in his life.
Wow.
Kenny was an amazing talent and a hell of a good guy. Loved him to death. He was good people. Loved working with him. And what a sense of humor. We had more fun on the road. Him and Dennis Hall and I. Dennis and I'd pick on Luke, and then Luke. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you. This happened in Nashville. Kenny and his wife and the boys lived 1 block down the street from my wife and I in Nashville. And we were just probably 10, 15 minutes at the most from the Fairgrounds Coliseum, where we wrestled on Wednesday nights. And Kenny was a fanatic about his privacy. And getting ready, his boys to start school in Nashville, right? Telling them if they ask what your dad does, tell him he's a bricklayer. Don't tell him he's a wrestler. He wanted to keep his life private. He would not give the office a phone number. Because on his day off, it was his day off, and the office wasn't going to call at the last minute and say, Kenny, we need you to fill in at such and such, which they did all the time with everybody. But anyway, he liked to keep a low key. So obviously the neighbors around him didn't know who he was either, right? He was just a new neighbor. Anyway, so Dennis Hall and I, we were all on the card in Nashville. Like I say, we lived probably 12, 15 minutes from the Coliseum. So I forget who we wrestled, but Luke was on the last match that night. And Hall and I had been in a tag match earlier. So anyway, we're standing by the babyface dressing room as Luke comes out to go to the ring. Dennis and I, to make sure he sees us, we're saying, go get him, Kenny, or something like that. So anyway, he gets in the ring, and the minute the bell rings to start the match, and we know it's going to go at least 35, 40 minutes. So anyway, the minute the bell rings and action starts, we head out the parking lot, jump in Dennis's car, and head for J Street. That was the name of the street that we lived on. And anyway, we get up there, and just a couple of houses before Kenny's, Dennis douses his headlights and turns into Kenny's driveway. And there's a big tree at the end of Kenny's driveway. I jump out, hammer, nail, and a sign. And the sign says, home of wrestling and TV star Ken Lucas, guided tours daily. And I nail it up on the tree, jump back in the car. By this time, Dennis has turned the car around and headed back from whence we came. We go back to the Coliseum. And when Kenny comes out of the ring, we're standing right in the same place we were standing when he went in the ring, right? So anyway, we thought he would catch it when he, like when his headlights would catch the signs as he pulled into the driveway. But apparently he didn't for whatever reason. So the next morning, his boys are going out to wait for the school bus, and they see the sign and go in and wake him up and say, Dad, there's a sign out front. But he knew who had done it, but we never copped to it, but he knew we had done it. But that was the kind of thing that he would do, right? When I first came in the territory, they didn't do anything physical, but the first time the three of us were together, Kenny says, oh, you're going to love it here. He said, Nick's just excited about having you here. I said, yeah, I bet he is. Nick Gulas, I said, yeah, I bet he is. Well, when he asked me about you, I told him, you came from a wealthy family, so making you a lot of money wasn't a big deal. You probably worked for nothing. Of course, he hadn't told him that, but that was just his sense of humor, right? So, yeah. Anyway, we had fun. I'll tell you the truth. I know these guys are making millions of dollars, and I wish I made millions of dollars too. But I wouldn't have traded the years I spent on the road with those guys for anything. It was a friggin' ball. It really was.
Yeah.
Wow. So I got to ask you about this guy because he's everybody. If you watch, if you're from the Nashville area, even if nowadays his name still gets tossed out there, what can you tell us about old Tojo Yamamoto?
I'd rather not tell you anything. You know, when they say you have nothing good to say nothing at all.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll just
No, that tells you something, doesn't it?
It does.
yeah. Wow. Okay, we'll move on.
I was not a good person. That I would say.
Hey, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
that's all we wanted to ask you.
Yeah. Well, how about this guy, Whitey Caldwell?
Loved him. Tag team partner here in Knoxville, in this end of the territory, and it's a dear friend. We hit it off right away, and damn, it's gone too soon. You know, he died in a car wreck. Drunk, hit him head on. He was going home up to the Tri-Cities from matches one night, and yeah, Whitey was a legend in this part of the country.
Yeah.
When he had his, I was in the Carolinas. Frank Morrell, and who was from this part of the country, also worked this territory. Mr. Crockett flew Frank and myself and John Ringley, his son-in-law, up to represent the company. And I'll never forget, we got to the, flew up in a private plane, rented a car at the airport. And when we got to the church, there were hundreds of people standing out in front of the church. And it's like they were lining, there was a long sidewalk down to the main entrance of the church. And we walked that. It was like huge crowds on both sides of us. It was a hell of a funeral. And now I don't know if they still do it or not, but up until I know a few years ago that somebody still placed flowers on Whitey's grave on the anniversary of his passing.
Yeah, Bo James, he says that they still do that.
Do they?
That's what Bo says.
Oh, well, if Bo said it, it must be so, huh?
I love old Bo. He's a character.
He is that. Yes, he is. Always a character.
Well, in 1970, you went to New Brunswick for 5 months. Tell us about your time up there.
Beautiful country. I loved it up there. Now, I'm not sure I'd want to be up there in the winter.
Right.
I went up in April and stayed through mid-October. Of course, I was up there for a dear friend of mine, Rudy Kay, who had been, we'd been tag team partners and next door neighbors in the Carolinas in 67 and part of 68. And he started the territory up there. And that's where I got my start with broadcasting.
Oh.
By accident. Why, really? I just went into wrestle. Actually, it's the only place I ever worked heel.
Okay.
He brought me in as, well, I was in my 30s. I was an American citizen. The Vietnam War was going on. So if you American citizen in his 30s went to Canada, obviously he's a draft dodger, right?
Right.
I wasn't a draft dodger, but nonetheless. Anyway, I worked heel. It's the only place in my life I ever worked heel for any length of time. But anyway, with the broadcasting thing, we lived in Moncton, wrestled there on Monday night, went to Halifax, wrestled Halifax on Tuesday night, and stayed over and did TV in Halifax on Wednesday morning. So anyway, Monday, Rudy calls me and starts talking, about this, that. And he said, when we were running the roads up down in the Carolinas, he said, talked about everything in the world. You talked about you might like to do broadcasting after you had met Gordon Soley. And I said, yeah, maybe. He said, well, do me a favor. He said, bring a sport coat and a tie and a good shirt tomorrow when we go to Halifax. And I said, why? He said, because you're going to host a TV. And you got to know my friend Rudy, and never mind Rudy, the Cormier brothers, Leo Burke, Bobby, the Beast. They all love to rib people, right? So the first thing I'm thinking now, he's pulling my leg. I'm going to take all my, a jacket and tie and all, and end up walking to the TV station and say, surprise, we got you, didn't we? So that was the first thing that crossed my mind, And then he finally convinced me. His announcer had a death in the family back, I think, in Toronto. and had to go home, and had thought it was going to be a quick trip, but then something to do with inheritance or whatever. He was going to be a few weeks. So Rudy needed somebody to fill in, and that's where he thought about me. So anyway, I went to Halifax and wrestled that night, and Wednesday morning, walked onto a TV set. I had been interviewed a few times on TV. I had no idea about doing an opening or segueing from one segment into commercial or out of a commercial into a match. And back then, you didn't have teams. You just had one guy on a microphone. So it was like, we're going to throw you in the water, kid. You better be able to swim. Otherwise, your ass is gone. So I got through it. I don't know how or why, but I did. And so I did 2 more weeks. And the third week, Rudy said, look, you're doing a hell of a job, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to leave him home in Toronto, and I'll compensate you and add to your weekly guarantee for doing the TV, and you finish up the season doing our TV. So
Wow.
that's how I got started.
That is awesome. Oh, man.
You're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Are you a pro wrestling fan? Well, stop by Captain's Corner, where you can get autographed photos, cards, magazines, and figures from all of your favorite wrestling superstars of the past, present, and future. You'll also be able to participate in live signings in the weeks and months to come. Make sure to stop by Captain's Corner on Facebook and give us a holler. Remember, cheers to the working man.
Bogarts and the Heartland Wrestling Association present a night of main event pro wrestling. Thursday, September the 24th, bell time 8 p.m. at Bogarts. 7 super matches in all, featuring WWF's Al Snow with a Head versus Edge. Darren Drozdov takes on former WCW Tag Champ Bunkhouse Buck, plus 5 other big bouts. All tickets, general admission at Bogarts, all Thriftway stores, or charge it by calling 562-4949. That's Thursday, September the 24th at Bogarts.
In 71, you're back in Florida. You worked the Dalton brothers a lot. Tell us about the Daltons.
Oh, Jim. Yeah. Well, Donnie Fargo was Jack Dalton, and Jim Dalton. And Jim was a hell of a performer, too. Never got a lot of push alone, but it was a hell of a veteran worker. He really was a talented guy. Well, the Florida territory, I mentioned the territories being different. Florida was wrestling. Basic, serious wrestling. Not a lot of crazy gimmicks, not a lot of that. And that's where you learn so much. Well, you could put a TV show together like Eddie Graham put a house show together. Well, what do you mean by that, Les? Well, the first match wrestled. There was nothing crazy went on in the opening match. It was a good, solid match. You got the people up. They kept moving. You got your baby face over or whatever, set the tone for the show, and moved on. If there was going to be blood, if there's going to be any big angles, it was going to be in the last match.
Yep.
And brother, you adhered to the rules, which would drive half the guys in the business today crazy. They wouldn't know how to do that. Seriously, it was a hell of a place to learn. You had great talent in a ring, and if you sat around the office or rode with Eddie and Louis Tollett, who was also, and Leo Garibaldi, who was one of my mentors and one of the people that I leaned to his teaching so much, even at this point in my life. But just like I say, it was like going to school. And, Jimmy Cornette says he's a fan. I'm a fan, too. I'm 85 years old, but I love doing what I do. I truly do. And I found out that in my life anyway, if I'm not doing something that I really have a passion for, I'm bored to tears and don't want to do it pretty much.
Yeah.
And there's been 3 things in my entire life that I've felt that passion for. And strangely enough, it's 3 things that I've pursued and done relatively well at. And the first of those 3 would have been drag racing. I was driving on a drag strip when I was 15 before I had a driver's license to get on the street.
Wow.
And drag raced into my wrestling career, but I'd come home. It was a family thing. I'd come home to be sure to home in early spring to get ready to go for the summer drag racing. I'd wrestle either for the Detroit office or Indianapolis or both of them. in the meantime, but then race on the weekends and then back out on the road for the winter. And it just got to be too much. And at some point, either we could only get so high in the racing thing without a big sponsor. So I figured, okay, I've got to walk away from that and concentrate on my wrestling career, which I did. And the third thing was, at the end of my wrestling career, which I walked away from at 40, not because I was burnt out, but because I was doing TV and for the Southeastern Territory and the Charlotte Territory. I was doing a magazine for the Charlotte Territory and wrestling in both territories and driving myself nuts. So anyway, and I, by not staying in the ring full time, I knew I was, slipping a little bit in terms of timing and stuff. So I just walked away. But I yearned for something, and I've been working with competitive bodybuilders since I'd moved back to Cincinnati. I was working with John Perillo, which trained pro bodybuilders and had a nutritional program. And I was working with him and training athletes. I said, okay, at age 46, I'm going to do one contest. I want to do one bodybuilding contest, just to say I did, because I've been training guys for that, right? But had never practiced what I preached, basically. So I did one, and I won my master's over 35 middleweight class. I won my class. So
wow.
I was so 13 more shows, and at the age of 54, I hung my posing tights up too. But anyway, those are the three things: drag racing, wrestling, and competitive, lifting, competitive bodybuilding.
That is awesome. That is impressive for sure.
I'm still a gym rat. I was in a gym here at 7:15 this morning, training chest and tries.
Wow.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
When were you in the gym last?
Last week, actually.
Oh.
Sadly. So, I know, right?
So was I. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yes, sir. I know. It's pathetic. Also,
what days are you talking about? And did you just pass through, or did you actually stop and do something?
No, you do a little something. Come on. I'm a cardio guy, so I need to put some weight on, though. Come on.
I know. Well, get your nose down that funny powder, and you won't have the problem.
Okay.
So in 72, you go back to Crockett, and you worked a lot with the Royal Kangaroos. You had several different partners.
Yeah.
What are your memories of working those guys?
They were wrestlers. They were a good team. They had to make a bit of adjustment. They had come to the States for the first time, and they were getting, and I remember somebody saying to one of them one time, well, hey, you also have to sell to get over, right? That sort of thing. But anyway, they made, and then Norman, hell, I remember seeing Norman Frederick Charles at the Gulf Coast reunions a few years ago, before he passed away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were talented. Listen, if you couldn't learn the art of tag team wrestling in the Carolinas, you needed to get a job somewhere else, in the gas station or selling stuff. I mean, that was some of the top in the 60s and the 70s. And into the 80s, even with the Four Horsemen, especially. Some of the greatest tag teams in the world came through the Carolinas. I was blessed to I teamed with Nelson Royal, Tony Rudy Kay, the Amazing Zuma, to name a few. And I got to work Becker and Weaver. Danny Miller and I went in there as a number 2 babyface team in 71. Tag team wrestling is a whole different thing than single. And but yeah, Carolinas was a great place to learn how to tag wrestle, and also a great place just to work. Working for the Crockett family was a real pleasure.
Well, tell us about the Anderson brothers.
Oh, that oldie. What an ass, huh? No, listen. I'm going to tell you another story. Okay. First time I went into Atlanta in 1966, I mentioned Leo Garibaldi. He was the booker. So anyway, first night, Kirby and I are going to be teamed in the old Atlanta auditorium Friday night show. And so Leo comes to us to give us the finish. Realized back then heels baby faces did not dress in the same area.
Yep.
And Leo also refereed. He's the only booker that I know of that actually refereed some of his matches. And he was going to referee ours that night too. So anyway, he came to us with a finish. And since it was my first week in the territory, he said to me, he said, Les, now I don't want you to think I'm going to start beating you from the get-go. He said, but I need to get this team over. These guys are new here. They're going to be my top heel team for a long time. I need to get them over. Okay, fine. Now, I don't know if Curb had ever worked with him before. I'm guessing maybe he had. But anyway, so and Leo happened to be the referee of our match. So we go out there, and it's one of these nights that you're working with your feet about 2 inches off the floor. You couldn't make a mistake if you actually wanted to. And we had that old auditorium just rocking. And Leo comes around in the middle of the match and says, we're not wasting this. Here's the new finish. We're bringing it back next week.
Wow.
And we never missed a lick. I tell that story to today's kids, and they turn pale and pass out. No, they don't, but they couldn't do it. But we were expected, right? So we switched, but that team was Lars and Gene Anderson. They were just getting the start of their push in 1966.
Okay.
Loved working with those guys. They were, it's a shame that there's not a lot of tape of their house show matches. There's probably stuff out there on TV, but of course, most of their TV matches weren't long, and a lot of them were squashes. But to watch those guys and learn from those guys would be just, I'd love to use, have tapes of them to use in training.
Wow.
They were that talented. Ole was a pain in the ass, but he was a talented pain in the ass.
So if you're going to be that, be talented, right?
Well, Lars was sharp. I told Arn's Brad when Arn was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 24. I said, I've wrestled with your uncle Lars. I've wrestled with your uncle Gene and your uncle Ole. Said, you never wrestled Dad? I said, your dad just a kid. He looked at it, and of course he was. I'd hung the tights up when Arn was just getting his start. I said, I quit at age 40, and that was about 1980, and 81 was when he was just getting his start. But great team. They were. I can't even begin to tell you how much fun they were to work with, and how much heat you could get with those guys. And it was amazing. They were extremely talented.
All right. Around this time, you go to Knoxville for Ron Fuller, and you become his TV announcer. So tell us about how
I was already a TV announcer, damn it.
I don't know. So was you brought in? Did Fuller bring you in as a TV announcer?
Let me fill you in on this now.
Okay.
When I left Canada and came back to States, I went to Nashville because that's where I'd left when I went to Canada. Went in there for a few months, and I went to Tampa. And in Tampa, the Carolinas were calling around for a number 2 babyface team, and Louis Tillett and Leo Garibaldi recommended Danny Miller and I. I don't know if because we were both from Ohio or what, but anyway, so we ended up going to Charlotte, and just as they started putting us over real strong. We unmasked the Masked Marvels, Jim Starr and Willie Garrett and stuff like that. So anyway, I was in the office one day, and Lord Littlebrook was there, and Mr. Crockett, and Brooks said to Mr. Crockett, why isn't Les, I can't do the English accent, why isn't Les on your TV, Mr. Crockett? And Jim looked at him and said, what do you mean, Brooke? He's on my TV. No, I don't mean wrestling, as a commentator. And Mr. Crockett said, well, why would he be that? He said, well, didn't you know he did Rudy's TV and did a great job. The midgets had been up there, so I worked with them on TV in Canada. But anyway, and so Mr. Crockett, he said, well, you never told me. I said, never thought it'd be important. So he said, would you like to try doing some of that here? I said, well, if you think you want me to. So that's how I got worked into doing I started floating around. I did Wednesday night with Big Bill Ward and in Charlotte, and I go to Raleigh on sometimes on Wednesday during the day. Work with Bob Cottle and Charlie Harbaugh over in High Point and stuff. But I was still wrestling too, right? So and then my dear friend Ron Fuller, who we became friends in Florida in '71 when I was down there, and maintained a friendship even when we were in different territories. And in '74, he called me and said, "I'm buying Knoxville. I want you to come in and build a TV for me. I don't know anything about television. Come in and put a TV show together." So from November of '74 to November of '77, my schedule, had an apartment in Charlotte. I'd go to the Charlotte office on Monday. George Scott and I'd sit down and go over the promos we were doing at TV on Wednesday. I might wrestle someplace, Charlotte, someplace in that territory, Monday night, Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, go to Raleigh. We did promos from noon till 5 p.m. Broke for lunch, come back, and I was at the time we were dual recording the A tape. Bob Cottle was doing one show, and I was doing the same show on another setting. And then back to Charlotte to my apartment. Maybe Thursday, I took a deep breath. Friday, got on a plane, flew to Knoxville, checked in the hotel. Ron and I put the TV together, wrestled in Knoxville Friday night, went and did TV Saturday morning, wrestled in one of those towns on Saturday night, flew back to Charlotte on Sunday, and repeated everything over again the next week. And I did that.
Oh, my goodness.
From 74 to 77. Plus, I did a magazine in the Carolinas, and also did a similar magazine for Vince McMahon Jr., 5 issues for his WWWF up north too. So anyway, I kept rather busy, guys.
When did you sleep?
I did. I want to know the truth. I was having a hell of a time. I enjoyed myself. I did. I mean, I was being creative with the TV up here in Knoxville, and creative with the magazine in the Carolinas, and I liked creating things. That's kind of my Jones. That's my drug of choice. Anyway,
me too. Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I had a ball, but and of course my wrestling was suffering because I'm trying to do 10 other things too. So that's why I just finally at age 40 said, that's enough. I filled in once in a while and that, but other than that, nothing, so, but yeah, that's so doing TV, hell, I was doing TV in Charlotte. I was doing TV in Knoxville. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, it's part of 73 and 74 during the war in Atlanta. They wanted me to come down to Atlanta to sit with Gordon. By the way, the first match that Gordon and I ever did is on YouTube. It's a Bill Watts, Tim Woods wrestling, Mr. Wrestling, and Bill Watts match on Atlanta TV.
Wow.
Okay.
Anyway, that was my audition to do the Atlanta show with the powers that be. Anyway, so I was down there at 73 and 74, and then went back to Charlotte again.
Wow.
While I was down there, I was still doing a magazine for Charlotte.
Dang. I got a question. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but this is a story I heard about when Fuller brought you into Knoxville, that Kazanis TV they said there was no format or nothing.
There wasn't.
The guys didn't know how I heard it was just chaos.
No, I'll tell you the story. When Ron called me, he said, I want you to come in and build me a TV. I don't know anything about it. You have carte blanche, just don't get too crazy. I said, okay. So anyway, of course, I built the format sitting in Charlotte, right? I didn't have to come to Knoxville to do that. But the first day that I flew in, he picked me up at the airport, went and had lunch. We went and checked me in the hotel, and then we went up to his house. And anyway, I said, okay, let's sit down and do your TV format. He said, we don't have a TV format. I said, excuse me? He said, we don't have a TV format. And I said, come on. No, he said, they just fly by the seat of their pants. So I said, give me you got some 8.5 by 11 stationery, a ruler, and a pencil. So I drew up a format. We went down to Kinko's and got copies made. And then I went home and we booked the first format for Southeastern Wrestling. And we took it in and handed it to the director and the sound man. They looked at us like we were nuts. They were going to have us drug tested before the day was over. Right? What do you mean format? Right? So that's when we started formatting the show. But we moved. That was at Channel 26.
Oh,
That's where John had first. When I first came to Knoxville to wrestle in '68, there was no TV here.
Wow.
It was old school, brother. You had your matches told the story, and that you hope the hell the people went out and talked about it. But he would go down to the News Sentinel and write his own press release to go in the newspaper. Right.
Okay.
And put out posters, and that was the advertised. He might have had some radio too. I don't know. But when we took over here, we moved the TV to Channel 10, which was a CBS affiliate at that time, on the 2:00 spot. And when we first got on the air at 1975 at Channel 10 here, commercial, you could buy a 30-second spot for $50. A couple of years later, you could buy that same 30-second spot for $250.
Jeez.
We were hot here.
Yeah.
We were doing charity softball games in the summer. We were doing the Jerry Lewis Telethon. We were all over the damn place. We were. And we're having fun doing it. And we were selling wrestling. We weren't selling, a lot of. Well, and we started that when Ron first opened the doors in Southeastern here. He brought Dale Lewis in, Danny Hodge, some of the legitimate guys to work as well. But yeah, we try to do a more serious vein to turn things in a different direction, But such is life. And now John Kazana, who was the promoter when I first came here to wrestle, his grandson is promoting around here now.
Yeah, that's wild. Old Joe, we had him on about a few months ago. So, yeah. Well, when Fuller sold Knoxville and left, did you actually stay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But then I went down to Florida to be with Ron for a few months. And then when he sold to Barnett. Then I went down there. Barnett sold to Crockett, Mulligan, and Flair.
Right.
And Rick called me. I was in Pensacola. And Rick called me and said that Lynn Lepper, who was the sales manager at Channel 10, had said we'll put you back on TV, but we would like to have Les come back as a lead announcer. And so I said, I'd love to come back. Make me an offer. He said, well, I'll pay you what you're getting there. I said, that's not an offer. Pay me more than they're paying me here. And my bag was, I'll start packing today. But anyway, no, I enjoy living here too. It's a good place. I like Knoxville. But anyway, so that's when I came back. And then Crockett finally, the whole idea was to incorporate Roanoke and part of the Virginia territory in with here, right? And although Flair owned part of this territory, he was only here once.
We've heard that.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, the best laid, it's a wrestling business. Things happen that nobody knows why they happen, but they do, and you move on and try to make the best of it. So anyway, when it closed down, then I just freelanced out of here. I was doing Puerto Rico because at the time, Carlos was promoting Trinidad and Barbados, which are both English-speaking countries. So they fly me into San Juan, and we drive to a small TV studio on the other end of the island and spend all day doing wraparounds, and doing play-by-play in the English to go to Barbados and Trinidad. Then they come back and fly me home again. So I was freelancing, around.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one of the, I guess, probably favorite promotions of this podcast, and for sure us, is Smoky Mountain. It's pretty clear how you ended up there, though, because of the local connection, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, in a way. Well, my son.
Okay.
See, I'm a Buckeye, born and raised, brother.
Right.
When Buckeyes slaughtered the Vols a couple years ago in college, I almost had to get a bodyguard to walk around with my Ohio State baseball cap on.
Be careful.
Yeah. But anyway, no, it's crazy. It is. It's a great town. Anyway, I would still be in Cincinnati, but most of my family that was there passed away. My daughter and her husband live about an hour or so north of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And they're farming, and I'm sure not a farmer.
Right.
My other son has some business just north of Knoxville here, up in Clinton and Rocky Top, Tennessee. Yes, there is a Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I thought I'll just, plus I had lived here before. Dr. Tom is here. We get together about once a week. So, I thought, okay, I've been here before. And actually, I'm living in the apartment complex across the street from the apartment complex I lived in when I was here.
Oh, wow.
In the 70s, early 80s. Yeah. So I'm familiar, I'm still a Buckeye, brother.
Right. Well, how was Smoky Mountain Wrestling, though? Did you enjoy your time there?
I love working for Jimmy. Jimmy has got more bark than he has got bite. But you know what? Let me say this. Jimmy is controversial. Yes. Jimmy will get in and make you think you're not even a human being. Yes. And he goes about it. When he gets crazy, he gets crazy. But you know what? 9 times out of 10, he's right.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, he is right.
Right.
Is probably the most fertile wrestling mind is still above ground right now. I mean, that I know of. I can't say there's not more, but
right.
Yeah. And his passion is all because he loves the business. Listen, I'm as passionate as he is. I'm just a little more low key.
Yeah.
But then the kids that trained with me when I first started training guys, you might ask him about the old bastard that trained him.
Yeah.
They might tell you that I breathe fire, but I really don't.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I know you worked around Bob for years before that, and do you have any good Bob Caudle stories? I love Bob. He's my favorite voice,
I don't, Bob and his wife, I think must be one of the closest, if there was a time that I thought, I once thought Bob and his wife should have lived in Mayberry.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
They were that kind of people. Bob
Wholesome.
Sweetheart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned a lot about broadcasting from him, but we had fun together. We did a tape for High Spots talking about our time working together in the Carolinas and here in Knoxville.
I've seen it. I own it, actually. I have that on tape somewhere.
Somewhere, huh?
Somewhere. It's in a box over here, but yeah, I need to get it out. Okay, well, around in 99, this is the question I've been looking forward to asking, and I know it has.
2026, or we got a break for dinner?
No, this is the last question. You're good.
Maybe I'm going to wait for my doorbell to ring and a caterer is coming and said,
sure, it's coming soon.
Jimmy sent lunch. Right?
I will be glad to do that if you want that, brother. No, this is actually the last question. So I'm excited to ask this one. So in 99, you appeared in an episode of the MTV series True Life, I'm a Pro Wrestler.
Yes.
I have seen this episode so many times, and it's one of my favorites. Honestly, if I ever see it on, I always watch it. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, they had seen me on MTV.
Mm.
Have you seen our thing on MTV?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of things stemmed from that.
Okay.
Right? Plus, right after that, we were on ABC 2020.
Right.
MSNBC's special edition. Anyway, we got a lot of coverage off that MTV thing. And so that was a big part of it. We had a TV crew from St. Louis come in and tape 2 segments with us to take back. They were going to run it 2 different days. Columbus, Ohio came in. We got more. The crazy thing is the MTV thing, we weren't the first people that were asked.
Oh.
No, but there were 2 other independent schools or promotions. They didn't say these guys wouldn't do right by us. They didn't burn them, but they didn't tell me who they were. But they said, how much you paying me? And I never asked how much you're paying me. And a couple of my kids say, how much are they paying us? I said, are you ribbing me? You're going to be on MTV and in a major show that's shown all around the world. You can't buy that. There is no, I couldn't sell my house and buy that. Do you understand me?
Right.
You know, so I mean, that was, so that was a big deal for us. And that, that the school, we were, well, before the TV thing popped, hell, we were just, if you knew the business and you knew I was being a good trainer and putting out a good product. If you didn't know the business, then you probably didn't know, right? But the MTV thing, man, it's crazy. Adam Copeland's wife, the first time I met her at Cauliflower Alley a few years ago, Beth, and I'd been talking to Adam, and she came in the room, and he was busy with somebody, and I walked up, and I said, "Hi, Beth." She said, "I know who you are. You're one of the reasons I'm in this business."
Wow.
And from the MTV thing.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought, damn.
Man.
But yeah, so yeah, that's why, it's why you didn't ask for any money. I said, I said, if I'd asked him for the money instead of them putting me on TV, they'd had to give me six figures for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a blessing. It was. And it worked well for us. It, got me the contract with WCW. Then when they folded their doors, JR said, come aboard. And so, yeah, it's been good. It's been good for me.
Yeah. Well, like you brought up earlier, it is 2026 and it's still paying dividends because we're still talking about it. So you're exactly right. You made the right choice on that.
Yeah, send money. Okay. Let me give you money orders or certified checks. Don't send me any credit card numbers.
Right. Don't need that. Yeah. Well, being that it's 2026 and everybody has a podcast now, but tell the folks about your podcast, Wrestling Weekly, and where they can find it.
Well, you can find us usually posted on YouTube. If you're on the Observer site, we're on there as well. That's where we started. Vic and I have been together over a dozen years, believe it or not, doing podcasts. Yeah. But we're going to expand what we're doing too. We're looking to bring a lady reporter on to talk from, a couple times a week or a month for shows. And I say next week we had Joe Hamilton on.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sorry, Joe Malenko.
One of the Joes.
Yeah. Joe Malenko, Joe Simon, Joe whoever. Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Tragos Thez Hall of Fame this past weekend. I didn't get to go, and he was up there. So anyway, and we're going to start having some good guests. I would like to do Ric Flair, and I don't give a damn about him going naked on an airplane or any of that crap. I was like the third guy to ever wrestle Flair when he came to the Carolinas, and I was part of the crew that made Ric Flair into the Nature Boy.
Yeah,
with like the promo end, George Scott was the booker, and one of the things that he would tell me, let him run as long as he stays on point. He gets off track, shut him down, start him over again. And that was the way it was.
That's awesome.
So I want to have Rick on to talk about that because nobody ever does.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not because I heard about it. I was there.
You lived it. Yeah.
And you can't buy that, I don't think.
No, you can't.
No.
Surprised if you'd like to try.
Well, I cannot wait to hear that episode. I can't wait to hear the Joe Malenko episode. I can't wait to hear it all. But first of all,
we post. Vic posts. He usually edits, and he posts on YouTube usually around 3 p.m. on Fridays.
Okay.
We record on Friday mornings around Eastern Standard Time, around between 10:30, and we usually get done by about noon.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But yeah, check us out, please do. Please.
Absolutely. Y'all check them out.
Supposed to be at the gathering the 23rd of this month, signing autographs.
I'm going to meet you there, so I'll be there. I live in Charlotte, so.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, well, I live in Mooresville, which is Nelson Royal Town.
Oh, Jesus, yes. I've been up to Diamond Arm more times than you can believe.
Oh, man. I've driven by it.
You know what? David was through Knoxville. Hell, how far back has it been? It's been a while. And we had lunch together.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, Les, this has been incredible, sir. Thank you so much for coming on our show today. Quinton, do you have anything for him before we go?
I just want to say it was an honor to get to talk to you, sir.
Well, it's an honor to talk to you guys, believe me. Anybody's willing to listen to the old man babble, I got to appreciate you guys, too. You're doing a job.
Well, thank you. And
Best
it's been, thank you so much.
I really had a good time with you. I've had fun.
Good.
I hope you know when I'm picking at you, I'm just trying to be funny.
Absolutely. We welcome it.
Hate you, damn it.
Don't kill the gimmick.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, sir. We don't want that.
No, you don't. No, you sure the hell don't. All right, guys. Listen, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
I've had a good time. Let's do it again sometime, okay?
All right. Sounds great. We will.
Then we could start from 99 and go all the way up.
Well, we got all kinds of questions, I'm sure. So thank you so much. The one and only Les Thatcher.
I'm serious. You guys have a good weekend, okay?
You too, sir. Thank you.
Take care now.
All right. That was the one and only Les Thatcher. We'll be right back to wrap things up on Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling after these messages.
Hey, my name is Tammy Reynolds. I am the wife of Forsaken Rick Reynolds, that super cool guy that everybody knows and loves. And I represent West Side Sauces. I make sauces, I bottle them, I seal them, I sell them. I have a hot honey sauce, I have a sweet sauce, I have a hot sauce, I have a white sauce that's so yummy you can use it on everything. They are absolutely amazing and I'm so proud of them. We make them from scratch. So go on our website, westsidesauces.com, check out our products, read about our story, and go online and order you some of these yummy sauces. And Rick actually uses all of the sauces because he is a die-hard smoker and griller, and so he likes really good sauces and rubs, and I make them, so how convenient is that for him? Go on our website, westsidesauces.com, order you some samples, and I think you'll thoroughly enjoy them. Thank you guys. Be blessed.
All right, guys, we are back, and Les Thatcher is awesome. Thank you so much, Les. We got to get you back on. We really only got so far. We went way back in his career on this one, and honestly, there's so much more to talk about with Les, so thank you so much for dropping by, Les, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you in the future, brother. Thank you. Continuing on, guys, continue to keep our buddy Ben Jordan in your prayers. He's fighting the good fight. Just had an awesome trip with his wild boy partner, Steve Neely. Went out west. I know they had a blast. I got to talk to Ben about it. And anyway, y'all just keep Ben in your prayers. And, of course, keep Quinton and his wife, Dana, in your prayers. Honestly, guys, like I say, as always, keep all of us in the show in your prayers. We greatly appreciate it so much. Next episode, guys, you know I can't spill it here, but if I could, you would love it. I promise. But just hang tight. If you want to find out all the news that is the news, go to @GMBMPW on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X. Guys, thank you so much for sharing, liking, following, supporting, all that. But most importantly, we appreciate you for listening. So, for the one and only Les Thatcher, the Territory Wrestling Guru Quinton Quarisma, and myself, this has been Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, and we'll see y'all next time.
Don't forget.
Wrestling fans, I'm Bob Cole along with Les Thatcher. Les, we got a great hour this week. We don't have to draw for our Beat the Champ, though.
No, we don't. Bruiser Bedlam is going to square off with a wild-eyed Southern boy, Tracy Smothers. That's a main event anyway.
That is our main event, and that's our challenge match, our Beat the Champ challenge match for this week. We're going to find out more about the Volunteer Slam, and I tell you, I'm anxious to find out about the Dirty White Boy.
I am, too. I'd like to see what his condition is. And, of course, we have tape of Macho Man Randy Savage as well.
All right, and what about our personality profile this
On the
week?
profile, ladies, get ready. We're going to talk to those fine young sensations, the thrill seekers, on personality profile today.
All right, fans, that and a lot more coming your way during this hour. We're about ready to go. Let's go to the ring.
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life.
We'll see you next week. And until then, so long for now.
This has been a James Rock Street production.